Hey everybody, what's going on? Hope you guys are doing good. I am doing just great. So right now I am giving the Star guitar a little bit of a level sanding. Now let me show this thing to you before I get too involved here. Look at that. No orange peel whatsoever on this thing. Now if I can get the clear coat to do the same thing, that'll be fantastic. So I've got 1500 grit sandpaper here, and what I'm using the 1500 grit sandpaper to do is to level the finish that is on here, even though it looks like it's level. Well, if I dry it off, and you can see over here, there's very, very, very faint orange peeling. And let me get it up closer so you can kind of see it. You can see it's very faint orange peeling. I did go through the paint a little bit over here, which is fine because I'm putting another coat on here. Right now I just want to sand out whatever imperfections, whatever dust. There's only a couple coats on here. I didn't like really flood this thing with paint. I don't want to flood it with paint. That's not how you do things. So I know that there's going to be some areas that are going to be missing paint on this thing right now. And I don't care, because the whole plan is to shoot a couple coats on here, level sand it, make sure that everything is flat, and if there's any like imperfections in the wood itself, by having the primer and having a couple coats of paint on there, it fills in those imperfections. So when I put the final coat of paint on here, those imperfections should go away. And they're minor imperfections. I mean, just barely could see them. So I've got this going on right now. And what I'm doing is I'm hitting all the edges using the curl technique, that putting the paper between your fingers to make a nice round edge. And I'm hitting all the edges first. And the reason why I'm hitting all the edges first, because the flat surfaces are flat. All right. And if I go ahead and sand everything down first with the block sanding, then I go ahead and hit the edges with this, it's going to get rid of the line that is between the top and the sides. It's going to make it curve over. I want that line. I want to keep that line that goes around. So that line separates the top and the sides. All right. And the reason why I want that line is because when I put the pinstriping on here, which is going to all be done by hand, it's not going to be done with masking tape or what stencils or anything else. It's all going to be done by hand. The line that's over here will be the stopping point of where these have to go. They don't wrap around the sides. They don't wrap around to the sides to the back. They're only on the top of the guitar. So I want to keep it that way, but have a stopping point of where they're all going to stop. So what I'm going to end up doing with this is, after I get the next coat of paint on here, now they say with this paint that you got 15 minutes of dry time, and then you go into your clear coat, which I've always let it kind of dry to where it was, dry, not just dry to the touch, but dry to where I can work with it like I am now, and kind of let it be like that. But with Max Spray, they tell you that, well, you can sit there and hit it with a clear coat right after it's been 15 minutes after it's been sprayed with the base coat. Sorry, I'm kind of like working here and talking at the same time. It's kind of like chewing gum and walking at the same time, Some people can do it, some people can't. So the reason why I want to put clear coat on here is to lock in this black and to be able to make a new canvas, so to say. So when I do the spider webbing on here, if I make a mistake or I don't like the way it looks, I can sand it off. And if I sand it off, I'm not going to go through this black into the primer. What's going to happen is I'm just going to sand off whatever's on top of the clear. And since the clear is much more harder than what this paint is, being a 2K instead of a 1K, drying time is different with the 2K and it is with the 1K as well. But the 2K just is a lot more of a harder finish than the 1K is. And, well, it's got two parts to it. You've got a hardener that's mixed in with the painting. And that hardener doesn't just accelerate drying time, it accelerates the chemical of the paint itself and makes it stronger. So by doing that, if I make any mistakes on my artwork, which I've done this before on other guitars as well, if I make any mistakes on the artwork, I can always just sand off the mistake part and redo without having to go through my base coat. Makes sense? I hope it does, because I don't want to have to repeat it again. So this is going to give me a nice surface. Now I wouldn't be doing this with, say, like 2000 grit or anything that is much more lighter, because you're not really doing it. The 1500 grit and 1000 grit works fantastic for level sanding, especially when you have not a lot of orange peel, but just have a few like dust spots and stuff like that. Something that's not going to look like the side of a brand new car, for instance. Okay, you look at these vehicles nowadays; they're not buffed out, and they don't have a shine like they used to years ago. You got orange peel on them now. And this will, 1000 and 1500 grit sandpaper will level out orange peel. There's no doubt about that. It does do the trick. But for something like that, especially if you know how thick the paint is, 800 grit works fantastic. But to me, 800 grit cuts too much material, too quick, too fast, and not knowing what is under the clear or how much clear there is and trying to level sand that bothers me, especially, like I said, not knowing how much paint's on there, that it's going to end up burning through when you buff it. Now, I've never had an issue where I burned through anything before. I'm just making sure that my sanding block doesn't have any material or anything on it, because whatever's on your sanding block, which I need to clean this because I could feel that there is stuff on there, so I'm going to use rubbing alcohol to do so. Get a rag. Put some rubbing alcohol. Now, never put your rags up to the opening, like on top of it, and then turn it upside down onto the rag, because what happens is, especially if you're using a dirty rag, you're contaminating the chemical, the liquid, whatever you're using, you're contaminating that with whatever's on that rag. So never turn a bottle upside down of something and end up contaminating what that bottle is, because now if I could do it like this, I have control over what's going into the rag. I also control what's going back into the bottle, and not only with alcohol but with thinners and stuff like that, lacquer thinner and shit like that too. You want to do it same way. Go and tip the bottle onto the rag, not put the rag over the top of the bottle and then tip over the bottle onto it. Alright, so I got this clean. Alright. See, I keep alcohol close by when I'm working on shit. So now what I want to do is, because I did the edges, rounded them off, I want to keep that nice solid line that's on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with some sandpaper. And I'm not going to sand this to where it is like really, really scuffed up, really bad. I just want to knock down anything that's sticking up, like a bug or piece of dust, a piece of dirt that got into the finish. You know, I just want to knock that down a little bit. I don't want to sit there and this way it doesn't show up in your clear coat, and then when it shows up at least with the clear coat, I could sand the clear coat and not go through the clear because there was something underneath the clear that kind of stuck up. So all I'm doing right now is I'm giving this something for the clear coat to stick to. Now, mostly I would be using an 800 grit sandpaper for this, but again, I don't want to cut this. And Max Spray says that you can use anywhere between 1,000 to 12,000 grit, or sorry, 1,000 to 1,200 grit sandpaper before applying a clear coat. So it must bond pretty good to it. I hit this area over here too because that's getting painted as well. Clean the sandpaper a little bit. Because right now the stage that this is at, and it's with, even if I wasn't doing the artwork on this and I was just going to put a clear coat over, I'd be doing the same thing right now, is leveling off this. This way any imperfections that is underneath the clear coat isn't going to sand through the top and be noticeable. Alright, so I've scuffed this part up enough. I don't really need to scuff this up any more than what it already is. I flip this thing over. And now it's time to scuff the top. Like I said, there was a little bit of a pimple or something sticking up over here. Probably a gnat, or I can't say mosquito because there's no mosquitoes out. It's too fucking cold for them. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but there is a line over here that goes around the edges, and that is my edge for the artwork to stop when I start doing the art. Now I really don't have to sand too much of where the bridge area is. I do want to scuff up that area, but I don't want to sand and get water in those holes. I did do the trick with the clear coat inside those holes. And like I said, anything that you do on the top right now, when you add your clear to it, it's going to transfer through that clear. So if you have a wave, if you have any type of a flaw, defect, anything like that, it's going to show up through the clear coat, and you'll see it on top of the clear coat. If there's like a bug inside there and it left a pimple, when you spray that clear coat on top of it, when you do your level sanding, chances are, because it's taller or higher, you'll end up cutting right through that little bug or pimple or whatever it is that's in your finish, and that is going to be a real thin spot for your clear coat. And you try buffing it, chances are, because of the cutting cream that you're using, it'll end up making that wider. So you want to be very, very careful when it comes to that, especially with cutting cream, and certain types of rubbing compounds are more aggressive than others. Now, I've been lucky of the rubbing compounds that I've been using. I really haven't had any troubles with, and And I use a lot of automotive products for especially doing this stuff here. And automotive products seem to work out really, really nice. And I haven't had any troubles at all with it. So all the edges on this thing came out really, really nice. Make sure you sand around everything. The only thing that I have to do is I have to find another drill bit to do my holes for the output jack. The one I got is a little bit too big, and it's kind of like pressing it a little bit. Now sanding this way with a block keeps all the flat surfaces nice and flat. Keeps all the surfaces from changing to anything than what they should be. Now, I'm going to go with a new piece of sandpaper and a bottle of, well, it used to be a bottle of medication, not no more, eh? Now, I'm kind of in a hurry right now, so I'm not going to let the sandpaper soak up the way I normally would, but I'm going to go into this. And you see how I'm doing this, and I'm going into the curve with a curve. That guarantees me a nice flat surface. And again, I'll be doing the same thing with this side as well. Get around that corner up there, around that edge. Now, I use a lot of automotive techniques when I do sanding, spraying, and everything else that I've been doing with these guitars. And you have to think about it, you know, even though it's wood, you know, it's still a painted surface. It's still a surface that you are going to be prepping for paint, prepping for polishing. Now this is very important right here too, because you don't want to have any flat spots in it. You want to make sure that stays nice and rounded. And the reason why I go with a 1500 grit sandpaper is because it cuts slower. It smooths out. It's still aggressive to smooth out. It's still aggressive to have the whole grit, you know, being able to remove material, but it does it slow. And that's what I want. It's something that's going to remove material very slow and not give me a bunch of low spots or spots where paint is thinner from one area to another. Sorry, I'm back all the way over here. This is kind of a long body. Alright, so let me check my surface here. Check my surface, see what I got. Knock down anything I didn't want. And it looks like after this water evaporates on here, I'll have to wipe this down again to get rid of the evaporated water dust from the paint. And then I can hit this with the black again. Okay, folks, that's it for right now. I'm going to let this hang up, let the water that's on it evaporate, and I'm going to end up wiping it down before spraying the last few coats, probably just 2 coats, of the black diamond on here, and hit it with the clear. Let that cure up, and in a couple of days it'll be ready for what I need it to be ready for as far as the webbing goes. And after that, hit it with the clear again, buff out, assembly. So it takes, I would say, since I've been working on this, and I haven't been working on it every single day, but I have been working on it quite a bit. It does take probably a month to build a body. Now, if I was doing this like 8 hours a day or something like that, I'd probably split that in half. So, all right, guys, you take it easy, have a good one, and I will catch up with y'all later.